Hey, and welcome to Better Conversations Live. My guest today is Emma Wainer. We're going to be talking about vocal connection. I'm very excited about this, Emma. So let me do a quick intro of you before we do our housekeeping stuff. Emma is an executive voice coach. I came across her on LinkedIn. I just loved her persona and profile and saw some of her videos, and I thought I'd like to talk to Emma a little bit more. So she's going to be talking to us about why speaking is not about you. And we've got so many places to go with this. She specialises in executive voice coaching for women with a vision and ambition to amplify their ability to be heard, cultivate the grace to influence, I love these, and become recognised as an impactful leader. And I think this is such an important topic. And as someone who coaches a lot of women, I see the massive value in what you're doing, Emma. So welcome to Better Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, likewise. And I've enlisted you as my co-host today. Welcome to Better Conversations. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat or in the discussion below. If you are watching the replay, do drop in your questions, any of your challenges around voice and presentation and speaking and so on. Really, really interested in that. And Emma?
Join us every Tuesday at 1 o'clock UK time on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and at Better Conversations Live.
Brilliant. And we are we're live at these times. So East Coast, 8 a.m., 2 p.m. Europe, 5:30 India, and in the evening, 10 p.m. East Coast Australia. So, and how can you be our guest, Emma?
You can come and be the guest on Better Conversations at BC Live at betterconversations.co.
Fab. Thank you so much for that. And you can also, if you follow if you follow me, follow my co-hosts, who today is also Emma, so please follow her on LinkedIn. Just get in touch with us if you've got something that you would feel really passionately about or feel strongly about, and you think leaders would benefit from hearing your perspective. Please get in touch with any one of us, and that's how you can reach me. So today we're going to be talking about vocal connections, and I was in researching and preparing for today, Emma. I found the phrase for a particular way of speaking that I think is really unhelpful. And obviously, maybe I'm a few years behind finding the name of it, because it's been something that's been studied for quite some time. There's a lot of YouTube videos on it, articles and so on. And it's this one, vocal fry, the creaky voice that at the end of your sentence when you're talking really carefully about yourself. So that happens. Now, tell us a little bit more about vocal fry.
Well, vocal fry is a really, really interesting one. Traditionally, it was something that you would see in the House of Lords. So if you're terribly rich and you're very powerful, I don't need to project my voice, because you all have to come much closer to me to hear what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is law. So it was really common in very high status individuals. Over the last decade, I suppose, it's really increased. And what we see now is it in artists, so pop stars, film stars, influencers, people who are in the media an awful lot. And what the translation has changed, so that the kind of idea behind it, the impetus behind it is changed. It's not I'm powerful. Now it's I'm so important, I'm so influential, I don't need to make an effort. You're all going to listen to everything I say, So I can just drop into this because, like, I mean, like, who cares? It's like the vocal version of like whatevs. You know, it really is.
Yes.
So you see it very commonly in pop stars, in film stars. I say influencers. It's all over the place. But what's happening is that young women and now more and more young men are adopting this similar kind of vocal technique. And as your quote says, what it does is it really undermines your credibility when you're speaking. It says to your audience, I'm not sure I should be here, particularly for women when it's at the end of our sentence. Yeah. So what I see very commonly in my studios is women start their sentences really confidently, but by the time they get to the end of the sentence, they're not quite sure how they're going to finish. And so it just kind of trails off into vocal. And so what happens, because there's this thing called the primacy effect, we remember the first and the last thing people say and how it made us feel. So if we hear that fry, that kind of like, oh, I'm not quite sure, we stop listening to the content. It undermines the credibility.
Yeah. And in the research, they were saying, so men do it. Apparently men 25%, women 10%, but I suspect that's kind of gone up perhaps with younger generations. The impact on the listener is that hearing women use it is far more off-putting. It's you know, we judge women more harshly for using it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true of most vocal concepts. When they're not being used really well, women get more harshly judged than men do. When you hear young men using vocal fry, it's kind of considered slightly sexy. It's a kind of sort of slightly desirable voice, that kind of laid back, relaxed voice. But with women, it goes immediately. There's a correlation between the vocal sound and their competence. So in particularly in a work situation, you don't want to be considered to be incompetent purely based on the sound of your voice.
Yeah.
I do see it a lot in young men as well. So I've worked with quite a few young men who I would say were in quite masculine environments. I wouldn't go as far to say they were toxic, but they were sort of, you know, financial institutions where it's quite fueled by testosterone. There's a lot of bravado and ego going on. And these young men don't necessarily quite fit that mold. They don't know where they sit necessarily. And so you hear it in their vocal tone as well. And it does undermine their credibility, not as much as it does the young women, but it definitely makes them sound less credible, less sure, less knowledgeable than someone who is using a clear tone, it's called. So when we have this nice clear tone. What's really interesting though is you can show people, you say, can you hear the difference? And they go, oh yeah. And then say, right, can you just use clear tone? And a lot of people can. They can make that choice to sound clear.
Well, there's a lot of there is a lot of peer pressure, and I imagine in when friends come together, they maybe use it more with each other. But yeah, definitely. And as this kind of points out, you know, you don't need things that are going to stop you from getting a job. You don't need things that are going to get in the way. And also longer term, your presentation skills, your ability and your own confidence to speak is super important. So yeah, that's very, really, really fascinating. There's loads more things that I've got questions about, which I'm sure we'll come to. But tell us more about yourself, Emma, and the work that you do.
Sure. I'm going to tell you a bit of my backstory because it's kind of relevant. So I've had a very squiggly career. I've worked in global pharmaceuticals. I joined a very small business after doing my speech and language therapy degree, which I loved the work. And I have to say with a heavy heart that I didn't enjoy working in the NHS. And I say that with two parents who worked in the NHS their whole lives. But I found it quite a difficult space to be in. And so I moved into the corporate space, joined a tiny company. There was just 6 of us. And when I left 10 years later, there was 30 of us. And I was director of operations. So my internal role was looking after people. My external role was working with clients to help them with the messaging through their events. So what did they want their audiences to think, feel and do before, during and after an event? And part of that kind of morphed into the production team coming to me and saying, oh, Emma, Bob's the worst presenter in the world. Can you do something? And so I'd go and I'd help Bob, and I loved it. And I knew a lot about presentations. I read about it. I'd done some of it in my degree, but I always felt like a little bit of a fraud. I didn't know about imposter syndrome then, but I definitely was suffering from it. So I did what all good imposter syndrome sufferers do. I went and did a master's degree in voice coaching and training.
Overqualify, yes.
Absolutely, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you don't know something, you need another PhD. And now I can bring all that knowledge of how to run a business, all the strategic stuff that you need to make decisions on, and bring the sort of observation skills from the speech and language therapy, and then the artistic skills of influence and engagement from the master's degree, and kind of bring that all to bear. So it's really, I know the transformational work that this can do. You know, going to university after 17 years break to do a master's degree, having had a career break, been at home with my kids for 5 years, and I was like, I don't really feel that strong, confident voice that I used to have. You know, a year later, it's totally transformational. And I see that all the time with clients. I had a lady the other day, she said to me, she sent me an email after we'd done some coaching. She's like, thank you. You've helped me discover my voice. And I thought about it for a bit, and I thought, I haven't actually. We've just uncovered it. It just got hidden. I'm not magic. I just know the process to kind of refine that and let it out into the world.
But such an important one, Emma. And I think you point to, yes, when you've been out of the workforce, your confidence takes a knock, and it does take something to pull you back and find that confidence. But also I think there are a lot of women and some men who don't know their voice, don't know what's most important to them, or how to articulate that. And I think it does have to start with feeling like you know your subject matter and you've got an opinion about it. And I always encourage people to find or explore what their point of view is on their subject. Because that's where you can lead from. It's much easier to lead from there than to feel like you've got to say something that sounds smart. So having a point of view is quite grounding. But I interrupted you.
No, absolutely. I think it's really important. We used to say, if you've got muddy thinking, your communication will be muddy. So really understanding who you are, what you stand for, and what you stand for in terms of your subject area is absolutely critical. Because if you don't know that, how could you ever think you're going to be able to articulate that to other people? So it's just, sometimes it's about just taking that step back and kind of reviewing what you know, understanding that you really are an expert in your specialist field, accepting that can be difficult for some people to actually saying, no, I am an expert in this. And then once you've done that, you'll find it so much easier to talk to other people about your area of expertise. It'll be clearer. It'll be more concise. It'll be much more engaging.
Yeah, and it's I think I wonder whether you come across this. Women feel like they're showboating if they try and talk about the value that they bring. And I think that's why moving away from this kind of having to say I'm great at, it just doesn't sit comfortably with a lot of women that I've worked with. And it's much easier to shift into language that can demonstrate the value that you're bringing to the organization, that you have a point of view that is very relevant and on point. And that it's almost like there's a sigh of relief, isn't there, when they go, oh, I can talk about it like that, demonstrate my value without feeling like I'm showboating or showing off or, thumping my fist on the table saying I've got, I'm the best at this and I should have that opportunity. But just using it to demonstrate the skill that they have. Yeah.
I think there's a really interesting thing that happens there linguistically with women, is that because we like to work collaboratively, that's one of our great skills. Most women can cohese a team really quickly and really easily. We're very good at picking up on information around us. What happens is when we've done a great job, we like to share the credit, and we say we. So we say, you know, the team managed this, we did that, we did the other. And because we are slightly stuck in our school mentality of, if I do a good job, then I'm going to get a good grade, I'll get a gold star and everybody will notice. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, does it?
No.
So we do have to move away from saying we did this to the moments where we say, you know, I delivered this. And we can do that in terms of case studies. You don't have to be saying I all the time, you know, but you can deliver a case. So you can say, you know, as we worked through this project, one of my responsibilities was to deliver the value on this or to deliver the value on that. And that way you're making it clear specifically what you did. So sometimes it's just about, it's about changing the language. So I did something there. I said just. It's just about changing the language. So just as a hedge, and women use that more often than men do. I just want to interrupt a minute because I'm wondering, you know, or can I just take a moment of your time? So it's hedging. It's saying you don't have to pay full attention to this because it's kind of throwaway.
Yes, well, it's that undermining qualifier, isn't it? It's it's minor, it's not so important, and using just and words similar to that are really not helpful at all. I encourage women to talk using more strategic language, more business strategy language. And sometimes that requires you to listen to your peers and your stakeholders, or, you know, the people you're trying to influence, and use some of the language that they use, not to dismiss what you're talking about or your position on it, but to make what you're saying more appealing, more familiar, because you're using terminology and words that other people are using. And so that is a good way to kind of find what that strategic language is, by listening to people. So you take, sorry, you were going to say.
No, I think that's such a brilliant point. I always say to people, start where your audience is.
Yeah.
Don't expect them to come to you, because that's quite it might be a trek for them, but always start where they are. You know, so use the language that they're using, use the energy that they're using. You know, what do they value? What's important to them? Start with their perspective, and then you can gradually kind of go, well, you know what, if we did this, then maybe, and you gradually kind of lead them linguistically and in terms of your energy towards where you'd rather they were. Then it's a much easier journey for them, rather than saying, hey, you guys over there, come, look, it's really great over here. They're not going to make that journey. It's too much effort.
I agree. I like the way you described it there. It's too much of a trek. Yes, make it easy for people, definitely. Talking about making it easy for people, how do you, I know you run programs with women, and you take them from a place of kind of really struggling with their presentation style, and just before we came live, you were telling me about one of your clients and the change that you've seen in her. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, this her journey is not unfamiliar, and it goes back to this education idea. So girls do well in school because we're good at following the rules. You know, we know what to do. We know how to behave. We're given instructions. We follow the instructions. We do really, really well. But we get a little bit stuck in this idea of like perfecting. So if I put a bit more effort in, I might get an A. I might get a gold star. You know, unfortunately, what happens is we take that into work. So we think that over preparing is going to mean we do a better job. So this client I've been working with, we've been working with together for about 6 weeks now. When she came, she would never do anything that she wasn't absolutely prepared for. And she would create these written statements, which were linguistically brilliant and in terms of structure, gorgeous. But there was no emotional content whatsoever. She would literally deliver it deadpan, no facial expression, no movement in her body, very little movement in her lips. And so whilst it was incredibly competent, it had no emotional content, no warmth in it at all. And so when someone's speaking, we look immediately for two things. We look for warmth, which we decide instantaneously, even before someone started speaking. And we look for competence. Competence will decide over a longer period of time. And so what was happening with her, there was no warmth. I couldn't get to know her. I couldn't get to like her, and therefore I couldn't get to trust her. And today, this morning, she, for the first time, she went, I'm not scripting today. I'm like, yes. And she had little bullet points of the things that she was going to talk about. And it was like the other people in the group went, oh my God, I can see you. I see who you are now. And it made a complete difference. Like the emotional connection was so much faster. You wanted to know more. You wanted to ask her questions. It wasn't as perfect as she might have done before, but it was much more human and much more engaging.
Well, and as I said to you, I think if I was reaching for perfection, I probably wouldn't do half the things that I push myself to do, because it's paralyzing. And one of the things, and I'm interested in what advice you give people when they are presenting. I used to, when I first started presenting, you get the handshake. I wouldn't pick up a piece of paper. I wouldn't pick up a drink. I'd be dry mouth, but I didn't dare pick up my glass because it. And two things I learned to do. One was get to know my audience before I spoke. So actually just connecting and knowing who you're talking to. I like to know who I'm talking to because it's less scary. And part of that fear is not knowing whether they're going to receive what I'm saying or it's going to land the way I want it to. And there's only one way to find out, and that's to have a chat with people before. And then the other technique, if I'm using any kind of presentation tools, is I structure it to tell the story, so I don't have to remember any words, and whether that's visual or whatever. And I've learned to let go, as you say, that sort of scripting, less of a need for it. There's more flow, and I allow myself to mess up and go off track and forget stuff. And someone will say, "You were going to say something about X. What did you say anything about that? Oh, I forgot. Sorry." Back to that. What do you advise women to do?
I think your idea of when we're talking, what happens is we're facing the wrong way. So if we talk it on a biological level, we're facing this way and the audience is looking that way. So your mammalian brain, that old bit of your brain is going, you're looking the wrong way. The danger's behind you. You're about to get eaten. So that's when you get those hormones, those adrenaline, the cortisol coursing through your system, which is what causes the shaky hands, the sweaty palms, the dry mouth. It's all designed to keep you safe. So if you need to run away or freeze, you've got the right hormones flooding your system to enable you to do that. Mm-hmm. The problem is that when we're speaking, we're not in danger. We're not about to be eaten. So it's like, I always say to people, it's like an outdated iOS. It's like we haven't updated the system, say, it's totally fine. We're all good. We've got this. And so the system's kind of going, run, run, run. And you don't really need to. So one of the things we can do is learn to understand that these symptoms are merely symptoms, and they're not in and of themselves a problem. It's the thoughts that we attach to those symptoms that are the problem. So if we start feeling shaky, our brain, I heard someone describe this inner cockroach the other day. I thought that was brilliant. Rather than inner critic, your inner cockroach. I thought, scuttles around being a pest. Your inner cockroach starts to fire up and go, oh, you're going to mess up. You didn't rehearse this enough. You don't know. They're going to ask you that data and you don't know the answers to that. And so the thoughts that we start attaching to these feelings become the problem. So one of the things you can do is just focus on the feeling. So if you happen to be somebody who gets sweaty palms, you're just going to focus on that. So before you need to speak, you can do a little running commentary to yourself about your hands, or they're feeling really sticky, or it feels weird when I put them together. And if I'm focusing on that thing, I don't have time or the ability to attach a thought, because we can't multitask. We can switch very quickly between things, but we cannot multitask. So focus on on the thing that's happening to you. My heart's racing, or I can really feel it pounding. I can only hear the blood in my ears, that sort of stuff. It's called experience, and actors use this on the side of the stage. They really just focus on the physical things that are going on inside them, or they look around and they describe in minute detail all the things that are happening around them. And that way they can't attach these unhelpful feelings. The other thing I would advise people to do, and this is going to sound really weird because we do it all the time, is breathe. Because the chances are when you're stressed, you've stopped breathing. We do it all the time. And this is one of the misnomers that people say to you, oh, don't worry, take a deep breath. It genuinely is the worst advice ever. Because if you think about it, make yourself tense, right? Imagine you're about to step on stage, you have forgotten your script, the tech's not working. What happens to your body? You go, you kind of fill up and you go rigid. And it's a bit like a balloon that's filled with air. And if I take a deep breath, it's the same as blowing more air into that balloon. And the only thing you can do is pop. So I always say to people, you don't want to be doing that on stage. Messy, awful, bad. Breathe out. Yeah. So if in doubt, breathe out. So if you're tight and you're tense and you go, you can feel your shoulders drop. You can feel your rib cage soften. Your belly softens, because often the belly gets tight when we're nervous. That softens, and then the body knows what to do. It will just call for air. Then you breathe in, and then you've got oxygen. Your brain starts working. You're like, oh, I got this. I know this stuff.
Wow, so it's great advice, because you're already tense, so you're asking your body to do another action on top of it, and that's not going to work.
No,
but yeah, breathing out is relaxing. Absolutely, I like that. I like that very much. Yeah, it is. We do we do panic, and I think we also think that the person or the audience in front of us is going to be hypercritical. And I think most people are thinking, wow, I wish I could get up on stage and do that. It's actually, people are in awe of you standing up on stage, because it's probably one of the biggest things people are terrified about, right? Presenting. Or public speaking, but I know public speaking, that word isn't for you. Tell us more about that.
I don't enjoy the word public speaking. It makes me, my hands are tightening up. The reason being is because we speak all the time in public. We do it all the time. And then to give it this label of public speaking, it kind of ups the ante when it doesn't need to. And what I find is you have these incredibly expressive people. I was working with a man the other day, 27 years experience in his industry, very high up in finance, was going for a big job at the Bank of England. Very kind of expressive, excited, passionate about what he did. We sat down to practice the interview. Then he went into work mode and he was talking like this. What's happened? So we get sort of stuck in this idea that we can't be expressive or passionate. So it's really important that we just think about speaking as speaking, the stuff that we do all the time. When we get too focused on us and it's about us, and public speaking makes you do that, it makes you focus inward. Whereas if you just say, I'm going to speak to these guys about my area of expertise, whatever that might be, it feels like a different thing. And I also think that there's some stuff that gets passed down from parents to children. My daughter had public speaking week at school the other week, and it's like, don't call it that. Call it confident communications. Call it connecting to your audience. Call it anything. But call it public speaking. Because I can just imagine, half the parents of the school were just kind of going, practice, you've got to get it right. And suddenly there's this tension around it that just doesn't need to be there. So yeah, I'm all for getting rid of the word public speaking.
Good. All right. Got rid of. Done. I sorted that one.
Yay.
But on the point about kids, I always encourage my kids to do drama at school, even to sort of GCSE level, because not not to become the next, great superstar, but the confidence that it gives you. And I remember we spent some time in the States, and one of my kids was involved in a performance, and I was chatting to the director, and he said he'd had people come to him years later and thank him for the confidence that the drama gave them to be able to stand up and speak to their teams, to their organizations. And I just think that, that's a really healthy way of getting people comfortable being in front of an audience, right? And just realize it's a craft, right? You do have to connect with your audience and understand what that needs to be. How do you encourage people to connect with their audience?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. So I would talk about presence. So how you mentioned it there. So actors are trained to be present. And people often say to me, well, but actors are lying. They're lying. So how can you use that when you're saying be authentic? So, well, in that moment, when the actor is on stage with the other actors or on stage and talking to the audience, everything that they're saying and thinking is real for them in that moment, real for that character. So when they're not committed to that, when they're not present to what's going on for that character, it feels like bad acting, and we kind of go, oh, that was unrealistic, because they weren't totally present to the character, to the words they were saying, to the audience, the other actor, and it feels hammy. So being able to be present to your audience is really, really important. And part of it is about thinking about your message being bigger than you. It has to encompass your audience in order for it to really create a connection. So sometimes I describe it to people. I say, like, imagine you've got this lovely light that's above you. It's really warm. It's a lovely yellow. It's really big, and it encompasses you and your audience and your message, whatever that message might be. So it's really, really big. What happens sometimes when we stand up and we get scared is that warm, lovely light snaps shut, and it's only on us, and it's that sort of clinical white light that, you feel like you're a specimen and you're pinned, that sort of, it's an unpleasant feeling. So we want to expand that light back out. Now, if we think about the purpose of why we're trying to connect to this audience, because often we get asked to speak and we don't think about the purpose. What am I trying to achieve for this audience? Why have I been asked to speak? What's my point of view, like you said earlier? And how do I make it relevant to this particular audience? That's really important for creating that connection with other people. And I'd say splitting your attention. So 50% of your attention needs to be on you and what you're doing. So am I gesturing? Am I using my voice in an interesting way? And 50% of your attention on the audience. So if they're not getting what you're talking about, you have the flexibility to stop and kind of going, okay, I sense this isn't landing. Where's the disconnect? Because otherwise, if you keep talking, you've lost them. You're wasting your time and energy and wasting their time and energy. So being able to stop and come back and kind of go, okay, right, what's happening here? But you can only do that if you're absolutely present.
Yeah, I think you're right. The presence is definitely there, and it's something that I've learned to do it because I kind of see presentations or talks or whatever as you're basically tacking in different, you're constantly course correcting, and plus it's more interesting. I enjoy people's questions because that piece is fascinating. It's much easier to answer somebody's question than to remember stuff that you've got to present or talk about. And so, that constant check-in is so important along the way. It makes it more conversational. It draws people in. You said something earlier about the gentleman you were coaching for an interview, and it reminded me of my work voice. I know I have a work when I get into the mode, if someone asks me something and it's out of context, I may be socializing. I think that's when I notice it most. When I'm not working and someone asks me a work question, I have a work voice. And it's quite serious.
Yeah.
Where's the line? Is it okay to be serious about your subject matter? Because I think sometimes, and I feel it, sometimes I feel like, "Oh, I'm being too serious. I shouldn't talk, I should lighten up and talk about it in a more fun way." But actually, sometimes I think that doesn't do it justice and I have something important to say. Where do you sit on that? What are your thoughts?
I think there's a couple of things. So if what you're talking about is emotionally weighty, is cognitively complex, or has a lot of imagery that you need your audience to really, really understand, then you need to be a little bit more serious. You need to slow down. You need to kind of really make sure that your point is landing. But if you delivered, if you talked to that person for 5 or 10 minutes at the party or whatever, and you delivered all of your information like that, they'd be like,
Yes.
this is a bit, it wouldn't work so well. So if there's a specific bit of what you're talking about that's important, like I would talk about raising the credibility and visibility of women, and that's something I'm really passionate about, then I would slow down and I would say that very more seriously. But the flip side of that is you need also to show your passion for what you do. So you can approach that in a much more lighthearted and fun way. So I say to people, listen, I love Jacinda Ardern. I think she's an amazing leader. I think she's an amazing communicator. So secretly, when I'm coaching, what I'm actually doing is I'm raising an army of pseudo Jacindas that I'm going to send out into the world, and we're going to have these amazing female leaders. So whilst I can be very serious about why this is really important, and I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I don't want her growing up in a world where she's considered to be different from her male colleagues because she speaks differently. So I'm driven to do this, but I don't necessarily have to be serious about it all the time, and I can let my passion show, but I know when to be serious. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's something that takes practice and knowing when you do have something serious to say, but also the understanding how to communicate and understanding your audience helps you with that. And I think I learn a lot from my audience because of the phrases they use.
Yes.
To describe a feeling or a challenge that they have, and that I use that to describe it to other people. So it's, I think understanding your audience that way is really important. I'm going to just jump to we've got I'm going to apologies, I'm going to try and say your name, but I am going to mess it up, I know. Odrago, it says hello. Hello. We've got another LinkedIn user saying about public speaking. They said, I love that. Speaking is about speaking, not public speaking, etc. So we banished that one. That's already gone. And another user has said, my kids teach me so many life lessons. I think they do.
They really do.
I think they teach us also about presentation because they switch off when they've had enough. Don't they? It's like, okay, yeah. I've done. All right, you didn't sign me up for that at all, Mum. I'm not bought in.
No.
What? Are you still talking? Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah, and I like what you said though about your that imagery of Jacinda and and your daughter. I think it is really important, and I think I'm actually, now that you've said that, I'm conscious of it with my girls about how they speak. I'm tuned into it, they articulating their words. I guess maybe is my pet thing. I like people to articulate fully the words. I'm slightly deaf, so if you sort of drop off the consonants where they're supposed to be, I will get a different message entirely. So yeah, I think enunciating is something that I think is important, whatever your accent is as well, then allowing that personality to come through.
Definitely. The consonants are really important. They give you meaning. So if I say bang, it could be bang, bang, or bank. It could be either of those. But if I don't say that last consonant, you don't know. So you work it out from the context. But then as a listener, you've got to work harder than you really ought to just to understand what I'm saying. So the consonants give you structure, they give you meaning, and then the vowels give you the feeling. So, you know, I can say I love you, or I can say I love you. So the vowel gives you the kind of sense, the emotion behind it. So they're both really, really important. But if you leave the consonants off, if you don't enunciate them properly, your audience has to work harder. And the harder they have to work, the less time they're going to work for. So if they've got to work hard, you can do that for a couple of minutes, but they're not going to do it for 20 minutes or half an hour.
Right. Right. And I think that's important as well if you're delivering a message, right? If you've got something important to say, being as succinct as possible while still using language that people get really easily. So not heavily laden with terminology or phrases that are very specialist, but trying to create an emotional connection for people, right? Within that is super important.
Yeah, use story, use metaphor, use something that people can latch onto, like what I would describe as like a universal truth, something that we all understand, that it doesn't require technical language. And then if you need to use technical language, you can add that in later, but strip as much of it away as possible.
Yeah, I agree. And it's hard to talk though as well. I think you can put too many too many specialist terms, and I certainly I stumble over my words sometimes, and you know, it's, I guess, more plainer language is helpful sometimes, right?
Yeah, definitely. It certainly helps our audience because they can absorb the information much more speedily. You can always give more, but it's harder to unpick misunderstanding once it's happened. So I would give less, more simplistically, and then just build up, you know, layer it up. You know, and for those who want the really technical information, they can always come back to you for more later.
Yeah, that's sound advice there, definitely. Something we started talking about initially, but this up talk, this going to a higher pitch at the end of sentences. It's very common these days. For me, it loses the quality of an accent, because it doesn't matter where you come from, everyone's sentences kind of go up. And I think what makes conversations colourful sometimes is the different accents and so on. What are your thoughts about, you know, up talk? How do you avoid that? How can we train ourselves out of talking up at the can't do it now, but talking up at the end of sentences? It's a very Australian thing, and it's kind of come in and been adopted globally. That's my sort of very poor assessment of what's happened. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
You're right. It's Australian, it's American. We also see it in Welsh and Irish accents. That's why they sound so melodic to us, because they're the opposite intonation to British English. The problem with uptalk is it undermines your credibility again, because you're making a statement, but it sounds like a question. So I can say the sky is blue, or I can say the sky is blue. It's the same words, but I've changed the tone and I've moved from making a statement to asking a question. Now, if you're at work and you're making a statement, I think this is the best course of action, or I think this is the best course of action, you're saying to your audience, you can disagree with me now. It's okay. You know, I'm not sure. What do you think? And so it really undermines your credibility. So number one, we have to become aware. So you've got to tune in. So if you record yourself, watch yourself back, listen for it, get somebody in the room who's, you know, a friend or a colleague, and say, yeah, you did it 3 times in that presentation or that talk. And then it's about thinking about a falling tone. So when we make a statement, we use a falling tone. So I'm going to demonstrate it in hello, my name's Emma. So I often see people go, hi, my name's Emma. So you hear my tone goes up. So is your name Emma or not? If you don't know your own name, how are you an expert in whatever you're going to talk about?
Start. No. Yes.
And you see people do it all the time. So I say hello or welcome, because it's 2 syllables and you can drop the second syllable. So hello. And I get people to do this with their hands. Hell being a higher tone, low being a lower tone. Hello, my name is Emma. And I just sound much more like I'm in control of the content rather than content being in control of me. I have more gravitas. I sound like I know what I'm talking about. So become aware, definitely, and then consciously think about this lower tone. And if you need to use your hand, do it. Actually make yourself make that tone drop is a really good way of doing it.
I like that. Visually reminding yourself of bringing that down, definitely. Are there any things that you want to share that we haven't sort of touched on so far about speaking?
I think that the one thing that I say to people quite regularly is speaking is an act of doing. So you're only going to get better by doing it. So you could read 1,000 books, you could watch listen to a million podcasts, watch YouTube all of your life, and you'll get a bit better. But actually, really, it's the doing of it, and the doing, and then the analysing. So watch yourself talk back, watch yourself on video. People hate it and love it because they always say, that was the best bit because now I see what you're saying. So watch yourself back and then think, right, I'm going to do this one thing differently next time. So if it's up talk, I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to make sure I say hello, and just do that for 3 weeks, and then choose the next thing to do. But do something, because you're not going to get anything different unless you do something different.
I'm sold. I get my students. You're right. It's uncomfortable listening to yourself or watching a recording of yourself, but it's the fastest way to grow. I get my students on Leaders Who Coach to record themselves in conversation, talking to people, and as I'm sure when you take your clients through sort of a journey, you can see the change in them, and it's quicker. You can drop the stuff that isn't helpful or that you're missing in the conversation much quicker if you see it.
Yes.
If you see yourself doing it, because you cringe and you don't want to feel like, you don't want that cringy feeling next time it happens, right?
Yeah.
So definitely. Glenn's jumped in with great tips. Yeah, I think this has been really lots of useful information here for people to certainly try and put into practice. And obviously do follow or connect with Emma if you are interested in going on that journey of improving your confidence and your skill in presenting, in speaking, and in leadership, because it is so important for women in leadership roles to feel confident and to speak confidently about themselves, about their team, about their perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
We are going to do a phrase of the week. So let me get that set up and I will get out of your way.
So the phrase of the week this week is, your audience will forgive you for anything except the fact that you don't care about them. So I was talking earlier about this lovely warm light that encompasses you and your audience. It feels good, they feel included, you feel like you're in it together. But at that moment when we start to speak and our attention snaps back onto us and we're caught under this horrible white light and we feel like a specimen, we're starting to forget about our audience, and all our attention, all our energy is flowing towards us, and it's no longer flowing towards the audience. So the audience will start to feel like you've forgotten about them. You won't be talking to their pain or to their needs. You're only going to be focusing on your own energy and getting through to the end of it, which means you're going to speak faster. You probably won't pause as much as you want to. And the information that you're delivering, this valuable information, is likely to get lost along the way. So thinking about what you can offer the audience, how you can serve them better, and keep that lovely warm light open and large, which encompasses you and the audience, it will serve you so much better, and they will really thank you for it. And they'll forgive you if you forget the word, or you say or you have to pause, or the tech doesn't work, or you drop your papers. They won't care as long as you demonstrate that you care about them.
I'm coming back just as the man next door is drilling.
Sorry.
That was brilliant. I love that. Thank you so much for that. We will get that out for sure. Really, really sound advice. I'm so glad we've had this conversation, Emma, and thank you for being a fantastic guest and coming on and talking and sharing your knowledge and clearly your passion. I'll keep watching your videos because I enjoy them so much. So yeah, and do reach out to Emma and check out those videos that I've been raving on about. Really great. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ah, always. We should do it again. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's other stuff we need to cover off. Next week we have Hasby, who's going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's doing some fascinating work. Talks a lot to younger generations and also lectures on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and very, very wonderful perspectives, very deep perspectives on the importance of it in our societies and so on. So do tune in next week. That will be myself and Hasby talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So yeah, we are Tuesdays. We'll be here Tuesday, 1 p.m. UK time, live streaming. So thanks again, everyone. And don't forget, if you've got something that you would like to share, you want to come on the show, do reach out to us. We like to get those topics out there. We like to talk serious, as I was saying to Emma, but also have fun talking about the important stuff as well. So thank you again, Emma.
Pleasure.
And we shall see you all on. I've got to set this up, Emma. I was talking too much and getting carried away. Let me remove this. We'll see you next week on Tuesday. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.